Hello and good evening, and thank you all for joining us. And so, welcome to part two. This is in our series. This is the second in our series called Operation Life Back to the Basics. And so, one of the things we had talked about at Black Doctor is, yes, COVID has really dominated a lot of the conversations with regards to health and healthcare and how we manage our health. But it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing we should be focusing on. And if we only focus on COVID, we can let other conditions get exacerbated or untreated, and then we can have more problems once we get this COVID situation under control. And so we said, okay, let's create a series that's talking about those medical conditions that predominantly and disproportionately affect Black Americans. And let's do a series of shows about them. We'll bring on doctors that are well-versed in these topics and that can give you our audience the information that they need, that they can use in their own personal health and wellness journey. And so that's been, that was kind of the impetus of this series. And so last week we did cholesterol, had a wonderful show with Dr. Ria Sankasani. So I encourage you to go to YouTube, go to our YouTube channel and watch that show. We talked about what makes up cholesterol, what your number should be, how it should be checked, and what you should be asking your doctor, which is the best thing. I'm not going to tell you today because you got to go back and watch it, and what you should be asking your doctor if your doctor says you have high cholesterol. Tonight, it's all about hypertension. And really, we labeled the show, Don't Believe the Hypertension, because we're going to give you the information that you need in order to lower your high blood pressure. So we have a wonderful doctor tonight. I know you didn't sign on to see me, even though I got the little freshness and clean going on, but you didn't sign on to see me. So we're going to bring on Dr. Candace White Jackson.
Hi.
She's not a stranger to Black Doctor. She has been on before, if y'all remember. She wrote that wonderful book. What's the name of the book?
Born into a Pandemic, A Mother's Precious Gift. That's my baby. Yes, on Amazon, Walmart, and Barnes and Nobles.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before we get started with talking about hypertension, I just want to make sure we always want you to do is let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I see Charlotte. Shout out to Florida. Oh, I'm gonna pray for you, Charlotte. I gotta have a moment of silence for what's going on. But thank you for joining us, Charlotte. So make sure you let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to have that. If you have somebody that you know somebody that has hypertension or that could benefit from this information, make sure you also tag them. And if you have a question for Dr. Candace, please put that in the comment section and we will try to get your questions answered. We've got a lot of questions that we're going to answer, so hopefully your questions will be answered during the program, but if not, make sure you drop it in the comment section. So with that being said, we got all of that out of the way. First question is this: what is hypertension? And is it the same as high blood pressure? Because I know you hear those terms being used, almost interchangeably. Are they the same thing?
Essentially, yes. So basically, you have a medical terminology, and then we have the layman terminology, but it's the same thing. And it's pretty much when your blood pressure is greater than 130/80. So in order to know where you stand, you got to check your blood pressure. So we're recommending that everyone who's watching us, they're going to purchase a blood pressure machine, because we should all know what our blood pressure is on any given day, right? Because people of color are at greater risk, and there is a higher prevalence in our minority community of individuals suffering from hypertension, also known as high blood pressure.
Okay, so they're the same. And you said that number is, again, 130?
You want to be less than 130/80, but okay. If you are consistently greater than 130/80, that is considered stage 1 hypertension.
Okay. 130/80 is your benchmark. That's kind of your line.
130/80, yes.
If you're over that, you're in stage 1 hypertension, but you want to be lower than that. What's considered to be ideal blood pressure?
So ideally, we always hear the standard less than 120/80, right? Mm-hmm. Once you get to that 120 to 129 over less than 80, and we're talking about a systolic and diastolic blood pressure. So the systolic is the top number, the diastolic is the bottom number. That's considered elevated. So the ideal blood pressure is still less than 120/80.
Okay. Now help our audience understand systolic and help me, because I think I've learned this before, so you can help me if I got this right.
Okay.
Systolic is when your heart pumps, the pressure when your heart pumps, and the diastolic is when it's not pumping.
Correct. It's in between beats. It's like the hardest feeling with blood.
Okay.
Yes.
To pump. So when your heart pumps to push the blood out, that's systolic. That's the top number. Between beats, when your heart is getting ready to pump again, that's the diastolic, and that's that bottom number. So
Correct.
80, you should be around 80 on that bottom number. Less than 120 is the top number. So that's when you buy your blood pressure machine at Walgreens, Walmart, wherever your drugstore is. I'm going to go old school, Eckert's, or wherever you can get it. Get your blood pressure machine. They're all automatic now, and you can check it, especially if you are in that borderline range, which is stage 1, that pushing to that 130 mark that you've laid out, so people can understand. All right, so I got that. So
speaking of blood pressure machines, Ellis, there are some validated blood pressure machines. You can go to validatebp.org, but
okay.
Omron is a popular brand. Omron, OMRON, it's like a validated brand which has more consistent BP readings, just for that piece of information.
Okay. And what's that site again? I'm gonna put it right here on the screen.
Validate BP. So validatebp.org, and I'll verify, but it's validatebp.org or validatebp.com. But that's how you go and you see if the machine that you have follows under a validate yes.
Okay.
List.
So Omron is a good BP machine to start with.
Yes.
Or if you want to get another one, if you've got one already, if you want to make sure it's a good one, go to validatebp.org or validatebp.com. Either one of those to check it out. You know Google works. We know Google can find anything, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So I know every time I go to the doctor, they put that cuff on my arm, or they put that thing on my finger, or whatever they do, but it's typically that cuff on your wrist or on your arm, and it squeezes. What is that squeezing doing? How is it measured? I know we talked about systolic, diastolic. Those are the numbers, but why do they have to do that? I see even the manual ones where they do that and they let the air out. What are they doing when they do that?
So basically, it's placed on the brachial artery, because what it's trying to do is actually to kind of constrict it and stop the flow. So then once it's stopped, and then you start to release the cuff, it starts back. You actually hear a sound, and so you know how to determine where you are on that scale of reading. I mean, granted, when you have one of those machines, it's going to do it for you, so you're not having to worry about that. But when the nurse or the doctor does it, we're actually listening for that vessel to release and start back beating once you have been constricted to the point where the blood no longer flows. And that's going to give us those two different pressures, that systolic and that diastolic reading.
Okay. I always wondered that. I was like, I just know your arm's they're gonna squeeze your arm for a minute. Okay. So we talked about what's good blood pressure. We talked about that 130 over 80. That's why I put it on screen. That's the line. If you're over that amount, if you're getting close, if you're consistently pushing towards that 130, you know you're borderline. And then if you cross over that 130 mark, that is stage 1. How many stages of hypertension or high blood pressure are there?
Great. So then after stage 1, then you have stage 2. So stage 2 would be then greater than 140 over 90. So that would be stage 2. So you're thinking, okay, stage 1 is greater than 130 over 80. And then by the time you get to stage 2, it's 140 or higher, or it's going to be 90 or higher. Now, when you get up there to where your top number is approaching like it's 180 and that bottom number is greater than 120, we're talking about a hypertensive crisis, which I see often in office. That's considered a medical emergency, especially if you're having any signs of in-organ damage. So that could be a headache, chest pain, changes in your vision, shortness of breath, palpitations. That's a hypertensive crisis greater than 180 over 120. So if you ever get those kind of readings at home, you should repeat the reading. Number 1, make sure it's accurate. So when you're taking the blood pressure, make sure both of your feet are on the ground, that you're seated back in your seat. You put your arm up at heart level so you could rest it on a table. Sit for about 3 minutes. Breathe in and out. Pretend you're somewhere nice and you're not stressed. Take a reading. If you ever get an elevated reading, just stop a moment, wait for 5 minutes, and recheck.
So a hypertensive crisis is 190 over 120?
No, so 180 over 120. Yes.
Okay. 180.
So that would be greater than 180 over 120 on the bottom.
Okay. So you start getting to that point, you said that's where you should take the reading again, put your feet on the ground. Because I did not know that. Like that was a tip that somebody told me, a doctor told me previously, that you should have your feet on the ground, flat on the ground, when they take your blood pressure.
Yeah, so not seated in the bed, lying down. You should always be on, seated in a chair with your feet on the ground. And let me just also make mention that whenever your blood pressure is elevated greater than 130 over 80, always just repeat it 5 minutes later to make sure it's accurate. And I do prefer the arm cuff versus the wrist, only because with the wrist, sometimes with user error, you will sometimes get more elevated numbers. And then by the time you recheck it, you're like, wait a minute, that was different from what I got before. So I just find that the arm cuffs are a bit more accurate.
Okay, that's good to know. That is good to know. Okay, so feet on the ground set, hypertensive crisis, take it again. Now, if you take it again and it's still elevated over 180 over 120, should you
We call
drive
it
yourself?
911. We're going to call it 911.
Should you just get in the car and go to the doctor, or should you have somebody take you, or call 911? Okay.
Well, because now we're talking about, again, you could have a stroke, you could have a heart attack, right? Like if you are having any kind of in-organ damage where you're having a headache or a chest pain, shortness of breath, you could actually be having a stroke or a heart attack when your blood pressure is that high. You don't want to take anything for granted, because time could be heart muscle, time could be brain function. It's just very important to take this seriously, because many of us kind of disregard this, and it's not a good thing.
Okay. So we got a good question. So does that ideal blood pressure change with age? Like, does it go down when you get older, or is it always that 120 over 80? Is that a universal number no matter if you're 9 or 90?
So here's the thing. So you have all these recommendations and guidelines, right? So you have the JNC 8, which is like the Joint National Commission, who stated that you could actually be a little bit more lenient with blood pressures. And they were actually stating if you were over like the age of 65, blood pressure could be a little bit higher, like less than 140 over 90. But then the American Cardiology came out and stated, and the American Heart Association stated that they want everybody, despite age, less than 130 over 80, because what studies have shown and research has shown is that when your blood pressure is greater than this, it causes your heart to work harder. And it puts additional pressure on your blood vessels, which can lead to buildup of atherosclerotic plaques in your blood vessels, which can lead to a blockage. And next thing you know, you have a heart attack and or a stroke.
Right. Okay. So, and that's why I said at the beginning, at the top of the show, it's important to watch that cholesterol show, because these two illnesses are very related. They're cousins. Okay.
Cousins. They are absolute cousins.
Okay. So we got that understanding where we're sitting there and we're going, okay. We got the arm cuff. Sorry, I had a brain freeze right there. The arm is better than the wrist. They've got varying degrees, but you should be trying to keep your blood pressure below 130. I'm just thinking in a general sense.
In a general sense, less than 130 over 80 is the goal. Ideally, less than 120 over 80, but a lot of people live, in the 120s. So it's less than 130 over 80 is acceptable.
Okay, got that piece. Anything, and then if you see over that, then let's start doing that, which is the next question. What are some ways that we can lower our blood pressure? Now, we know about salt. We know that the dirty word is salt, right? Salt is bad. So what are some foods? Are there any foods or anything that we can do to lower our blood pressure naturally before we have to start going on the medications?
Yes. So, so we know salt, right? But let's just clarify that for salt, for us, people of color, we tend to sometimes be salt retainers. And that's a long story. It could be genetics, could be a few other components. But with that being stated, we shouldn't really be eating more than 1,500 milligrams of salt a day. Think about it. 2,300 milligrams, which is stated that you could do a day, is like about a teaspoon. So think for us, less than 1,500 milligrams. So in order to keep up with that, you got to read your labels, or you have to prepare your food to know what you're actually putting into your food, to know what your cutoff should be. So that's going to help us, right? Also, using herbs and garlic. Garlic is a natural vasodilator for your blood vessels, and this can help to decrease, the pressure in your blood vessels. So I put garlic on everything. Plus, it tastes really good. Um, avocados and apricots and cantaloupe and foods that are rich in potassium, such as banana. You have greens, halibut, lima beans. You can use mushrooms, oranges. So what we're talking about is food from the earth. The cleaner you eat, the better you will feel. The cleaner you eat, the better you will feel. So if it is rich in a green vegetable, it's organic. I prefer organic. Sometimes, we got to get what we can afford, but, if it's organic, it's grown from the earth. These are the things that are very effective at helping us to lower our pressures.
So there it is again. We said this last week. Fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables are really good.
Potassium rich.
Potassium-rich foods like bananas, and even if you don't like bananas, like I'm not a big fan of eating bananas straight up, but what about a smoothie? If I could put a banana in a smoothie?
You sure could, and you could put you some spinach and some kale and some antioxidants with some blueberries and some raspberries. Yes.
Yes, so you can get your high potassium foods, seasoned with your herbs, and garlic is good for really helping out. Now, I've seen some people take like garlic pills, like garlic, and with the brand.
Yes.
People take garlic pills for their cholesterol as a natural remedy. Is that something that people can do to offset?
So here's the deal with most of these supplements. A lot of them are not FDA regulated. So, but you know what? I believe in supplements and trying natural approaches. So what I always say is, speak with your doctor, of course, before you just go grabbing everything from the store, because some of these things can interact with medications if you are on medications. However, if you try some of these things and you find that it is working for you, then you keep on doing it, because this could be something that helps you. But you always want to communicate that with your doctor, because we don't want you to have any interactions with any potential medications that you're on that could cause a problem. So always have that conversation with your healthcare provider.
Okay. So we know about salt. Are there any other foods that are bad, or is it just like, should we just be cutting out fried foods altogether? Does that help elevate? Because I know fried foods impact our cholesterol, but does that impact our blood pressure as well? Or is it just salt is the primary kind of culprit in this situation?
Well, no, foods, pork, red meat, pork can be high in salt. So no, you're right. Like there are other things that you can eat. Ackee and saltfish. I have a lot of patients from the Caribbean. And one thing, when we were doing our mission trips to Jamaica, to the bush in St. Mary, the one thing we counseled a lot of the people who live there was on how to, boil the saltfish, like get some of that out. So culturally, there are particular foods that can exacerbate the condition or the issue. So always try to look up those dietary facts and details and read those nutritional labels to see if you're getting less than 1,500 milligrams of salt a day. And that could be a good guide, but also limit your pork and red meat consumption, because not only can they exacerbate heart hypertension, but they can also just kind of sit in the gut. And then there are correlations with the red meat and colon cancer. And so really, the cleaner you eat, the better. Fresh fruits and vegetables, potassium rich, herbs, and a lot of herbs, and more herbs, and garlic. Yes.
Okay, so what about taking other like anti-inflammatories like turmeric? Yeah, I know that's used as a
seasoning. I love turmeric. Oh, it's a great one. It's anti-inflammatory turmeric. Using things like cinnamon. Cinnamon is a great one too. Ginger. So when we're literally talking, I always get them organic. So what you do is like I know here we have the DeKalb Farmers Market, which I love. I mean, it's a dream. It has everything in bulk, and you can get it in organic. So I always get these things organic, because a lot of times when they're manufacturing these products, we are really taking in certain things that are causing inflammation to our bodies. So if we can get it organic, then that would be the best option. But again, we know it's kind of expensive. So if you got to get the store brand, then that's fine as well. Get what you can. But always just think the cleaner you eat, the better you feel.
It's funny that word inflammation has become popular here recently. And I saw it. I was in the grocery store the other day, and I saw a magazine, and it was a health magazine, and it was like inflammation and all these ways to kind of reduce inflammation. And so we understand that in a lot of these foods, a lot of these things that we're doing are causing inflammation, and inflammation
Yes.
is bad.
It is.
Okay.
It's really bad. Leaky gut syndrome. It affects the gut, which is, a whole nother topic in itself. But yes, the
It is.
preservatives causes that inflammation. And then so you get all that joint pain and you feel achy and you just don't feel good. That is because your body is reacting to the foods that we are eating that is causing disease. Yes.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Okay, so we got a couple of questions. What are your thoughts on the DASH diet to lower blood pressure?
Yes, the DASH diet is actually something that I give a lot of my patients. And like we were talking about, the DASH diet is rich in what, Ellis? You know this already very well now. Fruits and vegetables. It talks about dietary approaches to stopping hypertension. That's what it stands for. And so lowering your sodium consumption and being
Mhm.
consistent, because you know how it is. You'll start some of these things and you'll fall off. So what we're talking about promoting is a lifestyle. This is how we live. So with all of your meals, you should have a serving of some kind of vegetable. And your protein, if you're eating protein, it should really be like the size of a fist. The majority of the plate should be greens and vegetables and some fruit if you eat fruit as well.
Yeah, you're talking about size of a fist.
Well, listen, because it's not what grandma used to do. All that 12-piece wing and 6-piece wing. Now, good and well, our bodies wasn't meant for that. So you know what you find if you just kind of, eat small, 3 meals a day, small meals a day, healthy snacks in between, right? You watch your proportions. You find, number one, that you're creating where you're not that hungry because you're eating
Right,
throughout the day. That's going to speed up your metabolism, right?
right.
And so it really becomes where you're like, wow, okay, before I was just overeating. We overeat here in this country. African Americans in other countries, they don't have the stats that we have here in America.
Absolutely. Oh, that was a good question. So there was a question, where can I find a DASH diet? You can find a DASH diet online. There's a lot
Yes,
of
you can find the DASH diet online. That has great resources too. The American Heart Association. It is amazing. They have blood pressure logs. So, like we talking about knowing what your numbers are, you can go on there, download a blood pressure log. That log will recap actually how do you take a blood pressure, and you will just be able to kind of keep up with that. They even have where you can track, like if you have a list of medications, like what do you take the medication for? Like so, it has recipes. It has diets on there, such as what we're discussing here. So please go to the American Heart Association for these resources that we are sharing because they're all there.
Okay. So yes, and also, thank you. That's I've got to produce this. I put it on the screen. Also, there was a question, and Dan, I'm going to answer this question for you. Can you go to your doctor? And your doctor probably has some resources. They're already printed out for you,
Oh yeah,
in terms of helping
yes,
you with your diet. So
absolutely,
I'm sure you get
absolutely.
that all the time.
A
So
big
yeah,
way also, Ellis, to help prevent hypertension or to help lower your blood pressure, you got to exercise. And if you smoke, you got to quit smoking. You
yes,
got to quit smoking. Yes,
yes.
tobacco. Yep, absolutely.
And smoking. You correct me. Stop me when I'm wrong. It constricts the blood vessels,
Yes, it makes them
and
hard
so
and stiff. So
yes, and so when you're already hypertensive and then you're making your blood vessels even smaller and stiff, then
yes,
that's going to cause your the blood pressure to go up, and that's how people can have
yes,
strokes, and that's how people have
yes,
heart attacks and things like that.
yes.
Because okay, all right,
Let's think of a water hose. So you know how, if, like, let's say we turn the water hose on, right? The
right,
water is flowing freely. Now let's put a kink in the hose. We used to put a kink in the hose to increase the pressure. So just
right,
think about that. We've decreased the diameter, which increases the velocity. So how fast that blood will travel. Same
okay,
thing when you get like that fatty buildup, or when those vessels get hard, you are closing off that diameter, making it small, so the blood shoots out. So just think, if that blood is shooting out, that's a force. You're not supposed to be banging up on the blood vessels. So
right,
that will end up causing friction to the inner lining of the blood vessel, causing these tiny tears. So that bad cholesterol, that LDL that you see on that report, it likes to
right.
accumulate amongst these areas, then adding more to that plaque accumulation. Next thing you know,
Mhm.
you're leading to a blockage and or stroke or a heart attack because of that fatty buildup in your blood vessels from uncontrolled blood pressure.
From uncontrolled blood pressure, and I'm gonna add just a little piece from what I learned from Dr. Sankasani last week. That blockage, most people assume that blockage is just in the heart, right? That
Right.
blockage can happen at anywhere in the body. And it could happen in your extremities and your lower extremities, which can
Yes.
cause you to have amputations. It can
Yes.
happen in the brain, which causes stroke.
Yes.
And then it can happen in the heart, where it will cause a heart attack.
There we go. Look at you.
I'm learning, but that's why we're doing these series, because we
Information.
really, ultimately, what we're really trying to do is get people to understand how all of these diseases and illnesses are connected, right? So if
Yes.
we can connect cholesterol to hypertension, then we know. And the same, and the diets have been the similar. Fruits and
Yes.
vegetables. The prescriptions have been fruits and vegetables and exercise. Those have been
Quit smoking, rest,
smoking.
decreasing your stress levels, right? Because what happens when our stress levels are high? We
Yeah,
release catecholamines, right? Your adrenaline, so norepinephrine, epinephrine. So think about when you're running from that dog or you're being chased by a bear, your fight or flight kicks in, that sympathetic nervous system. That's
right,
only meant to be on for like however long it takes you to run from the bear or the dog, right? And it's
right,
supposed to
right,
bring itself down and calm down. But when you are under a constant level of stress, these hormones will stay elevated. And
right.
now you have these hormones that are wreaking havoc on your blood vessels, and your heart and your blood sugars. And it's a domino effect that just does not stop. So if you are experiencing some type of stress in your life, whether it's a stressful relationship, whether it's a stressful job, whether it's your finances, you've got to sit back and figure out a way to manage that stress, because that really
Right.
can lead to something that could kill you.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, we can talk about stress. I got kids. You got kids. You know what it is. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to learn how, we have to learn how to deal with it, right? So that
yeah.
we can manage it.
Now talk to me about cortisol, because I know that's related to stress too, right? In terms of just
Yeah, so that's a part of that whole mechanism,
okay.
that domino effect that we were talking about, keeping those levels high, because it wasn't meant to stay in your blood, just over long periods of time. It's supposed to, kick in and then it shuts down. But with stress, it stays elevated. So you're going to constantly have fart and insult to your in organs and your blood sugars. And these are the things that can lead to chronic issues and comorbid conditions.
Well, and we got a comment from Donna. Donna, you're right. Culture and politics raises my blood pressure too. I get it. There's a lot
Donna,
going
please
on. But
don't go
Donna,
there. Don't go there, Donna.
I'll tell you like this: two things you can do that are immediate stress relievers. One, turn off social media, shut it
Yes.
down,
Unplug.
turn
Unplug.
off the news, right? I get up in the morning. I'm very, very disciplined about this. I get up in the morning. I have to review all the COVID stuff that's happening, right?
Right.
I do my news review in the morning, then I turn it off. And I turn
Yes.
off social media. And if I'm watching anything, it's going to be something like a program that I stream, something that's really more upbeat, that's funny,
Yes.
that I can zone out on. I love sports, so I watch a lot of sports
Me too.
just to get me away from
Yes.
what's going on in the
Healthy
world.
escapes is what you are speaking of.
Yeah.
So that could also be meditation. That
Yes.
could be prayer. That could be yoga, where you are just stretching. That could just be you walking out, getting you some
Yes.
fresh air and some sunshine, and you're just one with nature. That could be you taking a moment at work to just go to a prayer closet or to the bathroom and to stop and breathe.
Yeah.
Right? Just sometimes that's one thing I love about those Apple watches, is that
Yeah.
I'll just be in the midst of a day and it'll just say stop and breathe. And my patients might think I'm crazy, but you know what I'll do sometimes? I will stop and breathe. And then I'll say, you know what, breathe with me. And I might put my hand on their shoulder, because we're not touching yet because of COVID.
Right.
And we'll
Right.
just stop and breathe together. And we'll just breathe in
Yeah.
and let it out. And you just feel a little lighter than you did before.
Oxygen, from what I heard, and anytime I'm wrong, I need you to stop me, Dr. Kent. But what I've heard is that oxygen, um, or carbon dioxide, one of the two, is lowers your heart rate, helps lower your heart rate. Which one of those things? So that's why they tell you to stop, breathe in, hold it, and to lower your heart rate. What should we be doing? Slow breathing
Yes.
helps. Okay.
Yes, breathing. Yes, breathing is going to help you do that. It's going to help you to just relax and calm down, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
can take a moment to breathe and relax. And just think about it. When you get like in a heated argument or whatever, and before you just pop off and say something that you know you don't need to say, what do? You take a moment, you stop, you breathe.
Yeah.
Because everything just kind of calms down and settles down.
Yeah.
And you shift and your body shifts. And so being one with your body and being in tune with where you are and how you feel is very important, especially during these times, because that's going to help you maintain a good balance with your health and your wellness by being in tune with your body.
Absolutely. So, all right. So there was a question. How does exercise help lower your blood pressure? Because
Okay.
it almost feels counterintuitive. Let me give you the back. It's almost feel counterintuitive because every time you go to exercise, your heart ends up pumping like a jackrabbit, and you breathing hard. He's like, my blood pressure not going down; it's going up because I'm on this treadmill. I'm out here riding this bicycle or doing whatever. So how does exercise help lower your blood pressure?
Right. So just think about it. Like you said, when you're exercising, right, your heart rate goes up, the pressure goes up because your body needs more in order to keep up with what's going on. But as you're doing that, you are also describing to me how those pressures work, right? The systolic and diastolic pressure. So you're ejecting and you're relaxing. So if you are ejecting faster, then what happens? You are sending more blood to your vital organs, such as your brain, your heart, your muscles. What does blood carry? Oxygen and nutrients. So that means that you are able to give your body that oxygen and nutrients that it needs. And you're also able to condition, you're also able to burn calories. So if you had a little cheat meal during lunch or that night before when you had that piece of key lime pie, I saw you. What you were able to do is you were able to burn those calories, which helped to stabilize your weight, which helped to lower blood sugars, right? So it all works together.
And strengthening that heart makes it have to work not as hard to get that pump, that good pump, right?
Right. Oh, I love that you said that, because what happens when you have elevated pressures, your heart is working harder, and your heart is a muscle, right? So if you're in the gym and you're lifting weights, Ellis, what happens to your biceps when you're lifting weights?
They get bigger.
They get bigger.
That's the goal.
So if your heart is pumping harder, it gets bigger. So what happens to the space within that chamber, your ventricles, or the space within the atria that are responsible for filling up or ejecting? That space gets smaller. You have less room. Your heart has less efficiency. So what happens is that then eventually, as a pump, that pump will begin to back up. And so that means that now blood is no longer flowing outward. It's backing up to the lungs. And now that's how some people will develop heart failure, and they can't breathe because now you have fluid on your lungs. But that fluid was intended to be pumped out to your circulatory system. But now that heart is so large, right, it's working hard. Or when you have left ventricular hypertrophy, LVH, you often see this in people with uncontrolled blood pressure. Basically, that's just an enlarged heart. It's because your heart was working too hard. So in order to get under control, you have to exercise. And when you exercise and you're trying to eat right and that's not good enough, sometimes you need some medication. It just is what it is.
All right. So that takes us to the next phase of this discussion. What are the medications? Okay. So we know we're supposed to be eating foods, a little garlic. We can throw some garlic, cinnamon, herbs, potassium.
Yes.
We're going to exercise. We're going to eat right. But let's say, because there was an example, Belinda, I got you. So there was an example in terms of what if you're doing all those things, you're eating right, but you just got a family history and somebody just has elevated blood pressure level. I'm still back on last week. Elevated blood pressure level. What are the medications that they can take, and what do they do in terms of lowering our blood pressure?
Excellent. So first off, we just said that the first approach is lifestyle modifications, right? Like, I'm not trying to put you on medication just because you're telling me your blood pressure is high. I want to empower you to do some of those things that we've already discussed to see if that works. However, if that fails, our job as healthcare providers is to protect your heart. I got to protect your heart, because if anything happened to you, that would break my heart. So we have to talk about medications. And so with that being stated, in African Americans, the most effective ones research have found have been those thiazide diuretics, so like a hydrochlorothiazide, chlorthalidone, or a calcium channel blocker. So like amlodipine, verapamil. So I'm sure you all have heard of some of these. These are found to be a bit more effective. Are there other options? Absolutely. But typically, this is where you want to start for a person of color, just because they have been found to be more effective. Now, once you get started on these agents, I like to start slow. What does that mean? I'm going to put you on the low dose. I want to see what your body is going to do and how you will respond. So what you have to do when you leave me or your provider is now you have to monitor your blood pressure. The most frustrating thing for me is when a patient comes back and they don't bring their blood pressure log. They can't tell me what any of their numbers look like while they were home. The only reading I have is when they come back into the office with me, which let's say now it's 140/90. But we know coming to a doctor's office is not the ideal setting, right? Like you're nervous, you're going to see me. So you bringing that blood pressure log, which can be found on the American Heart Association, or you just writing down your numbers, that is going to help your doctor partner with you to figure out where your sweet dose lies, what works for you. So you've got to monitor. So that's how you know if the blood pressure medication is working. If you are getting on this medication now, your blood pressure is 140/90, you started this agent, and then now that blood pressure has fallen to less than 130/80, then there we go. That is what is working for you, in addition to you continuing to do your lifestyle modifications such as exercise and eating healthy.
Right. And I'm just going to throw the layman's cautionary piece in on this, is that yes, because I see all everybody's questions coming in, and they're saying, "Am I going to be on medications forever?" And I'm like, the answer is yes, if you don't do those other things and you just use the medication to regulate your blood pressure.
Thank you for saying that.
So if you just use your and you're still eating fried chicken and all your salty foods, then yeah, you're gonna be on medication the rest of your life.
Thank
But
you.
if you get the medication and lower, you get below that 130/80 threshold that we talked about earlier, and you're walking or you're exercising, you're finding somewhere to exercise, and you're eating right, you should be able to maintain your blood pressure you're on your own without the medication. But you've got to do both. You can't just say, "Well, I'm pop my pill and I'm gonna eat my chicken leg," and it doesn't go together. It doesn't
go. And I'm glad you said that, because I think the misconception is like I had a patient, right, came in blood pressure through the roof, like 100, 180 over like 100. So unfortunately, when pressures are that high, a lot of times I have to start more than one medication at one time. To make a long story short, the patient finally gets the blood pressure down. They're on 2 agents. Things are going well. The next time they come back into the office, blood pressure is up again. So I say, "Well, hey, what happened?" And the patient says, "Well, my blood pressure was controlled, so I just stopped my medication. I thought, but the blood pressure was controlled because you were on the 2 agents." So before you start making any changes to your regimen, talk with your doctor. If we can get you off the medication, we're going to get you off the medication. But don't do it on your own before making sure that it's the right thing to do, because that one time where you do that and your pressure shoots up, you could potentially have a heart attack and or stroke. And that could lead to other things that, we don't want to have to deal with, residual deficits. Now you got weakness on one side of your body and now you can't work and you're on disability. Like, this is a serious issue. So always consult with your doctor before making those changes.
Right. And high blood pressure, because a lot of Black people, we disproportionately have diabetes. You understand that?
Yes.
Diabetes in our community. High blood pressure and diabetes do not go together. They are villains that you don't want them 2 villains getting together.
No.
Because that leads to amputations and all kind of stuff that can happen.
Dialysis. People assume that it can be one or the other. If you are uncontrolled hypertensive, right? It's like one of the secondary causes to renal disease. It can actually wreak havoc on your kidneys and cause your kidneys to fail, because your kidneys are not supposed to function under those high pressures, same as your heart. With diabetes, if it's uncontrolled, it can affect your kidneys. So now if you got uncontrolled diabetes and you got uncontrolled hypertension, we got a problem. So a lot of people who are on dialysis, oftentimes it's because they were uncontrolled, either whether it was their hypertension, it was their diabetes, or a combination of both.
Right, right. So, and we don't want to be like, so we're going to go back to kind of things that you can do on your own, but we want to provide a cautionary tale and understand and really impress upon you how important it is to make sure that you're doing what you need to do and that you're following the recommendations all the way through to the end. So even if you started getting under control, you start getting thing under control, we can't go back to the way it was because, one of the analogies I like to always like to use is, let's say like you drove your car really, really hard. You was always stepping on the gas really hard and slamming on the brakes, and then your engine breaks down. You take it to the mechanic, your doctor, and your mechanic have you fix it. If you drove that car the same way after you got the car back, you're going to end up back at the mechanic. You're going to have to drive the car differently if you want that car to continue to work for you. The same thing is with your body. You cannot treat it the same way you did before you got the illness as you did afterwards. You got to go back to, and discipline is hard. Let me tell you something, because I love hot wings and I love my lemon pepper, and I I'll mix it with the medium sauce. I'm getting too deep, but I'm just trying to tell you, we all have our weaknesses.
Yeah, we do.
Discipline is a muscle, and it's got to be exercised in order for it to grow.
Yes, and our prescription for exercise is based on the American Heart Association, right? Because how do you become heart healthy? Yeah. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, for a total of 150 minutes a week, period, right? So that's you doing some type of moderate brisk exercise, whether you are walking moderately brisk, whether you are jogging. You can break it up if you need to, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, but the prescription is 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 150 minutes in order to be heart healthy.
You can't make it any plainer than that. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 150 minutes a week to be heart healthy. And you'll understand that as your overall weight starts going down, and we've had programs on here before, and we're talking about, and we understand Black women tend to be larger. So we're not talking about getting down to be a 6 or 4. We're not talking about, we're talking about being healthy at any size.
Thank you.
So don't get caught up in that. But if you just lose a few pounds, what it does for your heart, what it does for your blood pressure, what it does for other conditions, it has a tremendous effect. So if you are in, obesity is a diagnosis. It's not a term. You're not obese. Obesity is a diagnosis. So you can get rid of that diagnosis, but you've got to put in the work to overcome those illnesses that are disproportionately affecting our population. Man, Dr. Candace, you're dropping some knowledge today. I've seen you are really, really helping. So we're gonna, man. Okay, so everybody is talking about their medications, and they're talking about the blood pressure machine. So you, all right. So we're gonna recap.
So speaking of medication, so I think we should mention Ellis. We have to tell our guests that are watching that when you are on chronic medications, this means that you should be seeing your doctor either every 3 to 6 months. It depends on how controlled you are. The reason being is because we will monitor your liver function. I saw somebody says, can they mess with your liver? We will monitor your kidney function. These medications have to be monitored. So when you get on them, don't think you can just disappear and you just show up a year later. Absolutely not. We want to make sure that, number one, they're working. You're on the right dose. When it's time for you to come off, we can wean you off, in that your kidney and liver function and everything else remains stable. So that should be at least every 3 months that you are seeing your provider, or every 6 if you're well controlled. And you got to get lab work within that time frame to make sure things remain stable.
You bring up a good point, because I hear from when I talk to people, I get a lot of complaints about, oh, my doctor wasn't doing me. He put me on the wrong, he did this, he did that. But I'm like, well, what feedback did you give him? Right? And if you're not providing, it's our health, right? It's the biggest asset that we have. I mean, we can have a nice bank account, but if we don't have health, we cannot enjoy having a nice bank account. Health is our biggest asset. And so we've got to protect it. And by protecting it, that means when doctors start on some medication, if it's the wrong dosage, if it's making you feel some kind of way, Give them
Follow
that
up.
feedback so they can make the adjustment. Don't just say that doctor don't know what they're doing and stop taking medication, because now you're
Correct.
putting your biggest asset in jeopardy. Give them the feedback. Call them back and say, "Hey, look, doc, that wasn't doing right. My heart started fluttering. I
Yes.
couldn't sleep. It was messing with my appetite." Whatever you're feeling, give the doctor that feedback so they can make the adjustments necessary to get you on the right plan.
The right
Okay.
regimen.
If you're
Correct.
not working with your doctor, you can't complain, right?
You
That's
know
on you.
about that, Ellis? That is that what you're speaking to is that physician-patient partnership. It's a partnership. When you come to me, we are building a relationship and a partnership so that we can make sure that you are living your best life as
Yeah.
healthy as you can possibly be. So it's not just up to me, it's up to us. And that requires you to follow up and to give your doctor feedback and to tell us when something is not working for you. You have a voice. It is
Right.
okay. If you are someplace where you feel like you cannot talk to your primary provider, you feel like you're not being heard, then maybe you're in the wrong place and it's not the right fit for you, because it's so important that your concerns and your views are heard and you feel respected. So let's just make mention of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. This is a relationship, and it's a two-person relationship. It's not you go to the doctor tells you what you do, you go away. This is a two-person relationship, and so you've got to give them that feedback and really take ownership. And you're the driver. Your doctor is the person that you're seeking advice from, but you
Correct.
drive everything. You're the one. The doctor's not putting that pill in your mouth in the morning. The doctor's not walking with you in the evening, in the afternoon. The doctor's not filling up your plate and putting what's on your food on your plate. You're doing that. So you're the primary driver of your health outcomes, not
Correct.
the doctor.
Not the doctor. And Ellis, you got a question about, can sleep affect blood pressure? That is a great one, because on all those list of things that we said, what can affect blood pressure? So I have patients who they'll say, "Oh, my husband snores and the blood pressure is out. He'll wake up and he doesn't go back to sleep." Well, come to find out, the patient might have had sleep apnea. And what
Right.
people don't realize is that sleep apnea can cause you to have pulmonary hypertension, which also then can also affect your blood pressure. Like, it's all related. So yes, be mindful, communicate these things with your provider if you are having these issues, because there could be some underlying causes that are exacerbating your blood pressure, that if you just were to get those things treated, it could potentially resolve the issue.
Yes, yes. And so if you've been watching, if you've been hanging with us and you're a regular coming to Black Doctor, especially on our Facebook page, you understand what we have done over these past couple of weeks, because I see your feedback. Y'all know y'all see me here at least 2 or 3 times a week on these shows. So I see all your feedback. And so what I've been doing is trying to put together a series of programs that are addressing some of the things that you're concerned about. So on Saturday, guess what? On Health and Wellness 360 with T. Fallon Chi, they did a program all about sleep. So you can go find that on our YouTube channel. And
I
it
love
talks about sleep hygiene and the impact it has on your overall, well, health and wellness. We talked about our cholesterol show. And now we got high blood pressure. Next week, we're going to be talking about asthma, COPD, and all of those breathing disorders. Then we're going to be talking about diabetes. And then we got a whole series on cancer that we got coming up in September, where we're going to be talking about lung cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. All of these things are disproportionately affecting our community, and the interconnectedness of each and every one of these illnesses, right? Because if we just look at them independently, we won't think about it as our wellness practice. We'll think about it, I got to deal with my diabetes. No, your diabetes is part of your overall wellness practice,
absolutely.
which is diet, exercise, sleep is an important cog in that, a way important cog, and stress reduction. All of those things play an important role in our overall wellness. Woo, boy, we have a church up in here.
Church. Oh, so we have a church. Can I add to that? Can I add to that, since we have a church? So what you
Please.
were just saying too, Ellis, is we also have to remember that the mind, the body, and the spirit is also connected. The mind, the body, and the spirit is also
Yes.
connected. So if there is something in you that is feeling off, whether that is the spirit, whether that is your mind, remember, your mental health matters. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So please do not ignore it, because it can exacerbate your hypertension and make it worse. It can exacerbate your diabetes and make it worse. So we have to give every aspect of our wellness that equal nurturing in order to have balance with our health and wellness individually.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up here on the hour, because I promised Dr. Candace I'll get out here in an hour. So I'm going to talk about the last elephant in the room, and particularly as it pertains to Black Americans. We understand the historic practices of racism and redlining and things of that nature that have kind of put us in food deserts. So we're talking about right now, talking about the social determinants of health. And I know that's a phrase that we throw out a lot, but that basically just means that you might live, and we've talked about this on other programs, you might live in an area where you don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables within a 10 to 15, 20-mile radius of where you live. And you might have transportation challenges. You might not have a gym in your neighborhood. And so we have to be, and you might have to work 2 jobs just in order to survive, because minimum wage, we know, is not a living wage in this country. So those are all part of the social determinants of health. But that should not be the only determinants to you being healthy. That just means you have more obstacles to overcome. And those are the things, the obstacles that you have to bring to your healthcare provider. Because if they don't understand the challenges that you're facing, they may give you a prescription or give you a treatment plan that you can't keep up on your own.
So here's something about that, and I'm very passionate about what you just said. So I have a master's in public health. I study health disparities. They're very real. I choose to practice in an underserved area where I currently am. I think it matters when you are researching your providers and just trying to get a feel for their style and how they practice. Make sure that you mention some of your barriers, because if you don't tell us, we won't know. Like, for instance, there are several medications that are free at certain pharmacies. I will always recommend for my patients, and we go through that and say, hey, you know what? This is a great option. This medication is free. How about we give it a try? There's more than one way to skin a cat. You might not have money for a gym membership, but you can walk out right in your neighborhood, right? You can go on in the backyard and do some jumping jacks, and you could do some sit-ups. You got to improvise. You can get a few seeds and plant some fresh vegetables. Start one at a time, right? You can do that. Sometimes you may have to buy frozen vegetables. Hey, that's a good substitute. They last longer. If you have to do that, they're a bit cheaper. So you have to just improvise, and you make a plan. Making a plan can help to get organized and can also allow you to see the forest from the tree, so you're not overwhelmed with all of these different details and moving parts.
Yeah, I think exactly, Sherry. But Sherry, we got a show coming. I'm telling you, I'm listening to y'all. I got a show coming, and it's called. I'm not even going to tease the title, but I promise you, I got another show coming up that's going to talk about all of these things: exercise and diet. We're going to give you all the tools that you need. What we're trying to do here, Black Doctor, is give you programming that you can come here, and whether you could watch it live or you could watch it on an archives, that gets you the information you need to start building a health and wellness program for you and or your family or your loved one. Share this information, get it out there, because it's vitally important. We understand, again, the elephant in the room is COVID. All of these illnesses that we're talking about, that's the reason why Blacks are almost twice as likely to die from catching COVID as a white counterpart, is because we have comorbid conditions that are being exacerbated by COVID. So if we can get rid of the hypertension, if we can lower people's cholesterol, if we can get them to control their diabetes, reduce the inflammation in their body, then we have a better chance of surviving, even if we get COVID. So it's all connected. I'm getting off my soapbox right here. Dr. Candace.
It's all connected, Ellis. No, you're right. It's all connected.
And so it's absolutely there. So Dr. Candace, if people wanted to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you?
So if you live in the Atlanta, Georgia area, you can look me up. You can Google me, Dr. Candace White, and come see me. I would be happy to take care of you. I am actually accepting new patients at this time. I don't know how long, but right now I am accepting new patients. So come see me. I am also on social media at The Real Dr. Candace White. That's more of me just kind of showing you my life as being a physician, someone who works in the community, someone who's real, someone that you can relate to. That's another way to just kind of keep in touch with me. But I really just want everyone here to remember that the mind, body, and spirit is all connected. And you have to give equal nurturing to all three parts in order to achieve and maintain that balance. Remember that you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anybody else. So just start there.
Amen. Amen to that. Do you do virtual? I know we're in this
I
new
do telemedicine. What you mean, like what? Virtual?
telemedicine. Yeah,
I do
telemedicine.
telemedicine. I do it all. I do it all. I do talks. If you need somebody to talk, and you can find me you can send me a message on the real Dr. Candace White on Instagram. And I also have a Facebook page that I'm starting to actually put more energy into. But that is the best place to find me is Instagram.
Instagram, and that's can I get our producer to put that on screen there? It's at
The real Dr. Candace White.
Okay, so you can find her on the gram. She's also on Facebook. She works in the Atlanta metro area, so you can do a Google search. And she does do telemedicine. Could I see somebody talking about getting on a plane? She could do telemedicine. It's the real Dr. Candace White. Put White on that for me. So yeah, so you don't have to get on the plane. Just set up a telehealth and just have a good connection. So when she talks to you now, she's going to have to do your lab, so that there's going to be some trickiness that comes into to come into that. So you're going to have to get some lab work done at some point, but she can do some telehealth right now. So Chicago, New York's in the house. Yvette, come on.
Hi.
So I just want to say thank you, Dr. Candace. You absolutely have been the real Dr. Candace White. You have given us some real life-saving information. You have really helped us understand what hypertension, high blood pressure is, and will help us move forward in terms, because I think with greater understanding, we know how to overcome it. But if we don't really understand what it is, we're going to have a harder time beating it. But I think just understanding diet, exercise, make sure you eat your fruits and vegetables, make sure you get any type of movement, exercise, movement, get your 150 per week. Know what that number is, know what that top and bottom number should be. Get your journal. If you're borderline hypertensive or in stage 1, stage 2, you should be journaling your blood pressure. Get you a good blood pressure machine. That's something that you can do on your own. So we're trying to give you tools that you can do on your own before you have to go to Dr. Candace White and get on those medications that she was talking about earlier in the program. So again, Dr. Candace, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back. We got to have you back.
Of course. So, I feel at home with you guys. So I look forward to
regular. You're regular on the show. And we need to talk about that book, because I think right now yes. And it chronicles her journey, because Dr. White was pregnant during the pandemic. She had her child. And I'm not going to give away the book, because you got to get the book. But it's a wonderful, wonderful, uplifting story. It's a very easy read. And it's an uplifting story. It's a cautionary tale. And it talks about how we could overcome all of these things, right? So I really appreciate the fact that you put that out there, and you were able to share your experiences with the world, and really, really happy that it's out there. So make sure you go buy the book, look for Dr. White, and share this with your friends. Again, thank you all for joining us. And we will see you all next week. Asthma, COPD. We're going to talk about breathing next week. So we got you. Yes, it's recorded, Angela. We're going to be on it's on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube tomorrow, and we're going to re-air it in the morning. So we're going to re-air it in the morning. So if you got somebody who needs to watch it, it'll be re-aired tomorrow, and it's also on YouTube, so you'll be able to find it on YouTube.